everybody. Thank you for coming back to my channel. Today I'd like to share with you a conversation I had with a good friend of mine, Dr. Aliya Saeed. She is a board certified psychiatrist and a huge advocate for mental health and equity in the community. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please hit the subscribe button and hit the like button for this video. Hope you enjoyed this conversation. Well, hi, Aliya. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me.
Thank
We've
you.
known each other for a few years now, and I've always admired your work in the community. Do you want to just start by just telling us a little bit about your, like, how you grew up, and you immigrated to this country, right?
That is true. So I grew up in Pakistan, and I was the youngest of four. I grew up as a child. I would say I was not somebody who liked to sit and study a lot. Uh, I was more about play, and because my parents had to move around quite a bit because of my father's job. The first 4 years of my school was really non-existent. My mother taught me how to read and write. And it was only in fifth grade that I started formal schooling, which was unusual even where I grew up. But I was too young to be left in places where we had proper schools. So I traveled around with my parents everywhere. So I had a life full of play and very little studying when I was young, which I am really grateful for.
Wow,
Um,
awesome. That's kind of the modern day homeschooling or the unschooling, if you want to call it, right?
that is true, but I would say that that is why my handwriting is still atrocious today.
Mine is too, by the way. So,
And that's why I think that may be why it's a little bit easier for me to be a physician. I'm just kidding. I don't mean that. But
well,
physicians
like
are
all
notoriously
physicians, you
bad
just like
handwriting.
scribble, right?
Right. So I was definitely glad when everything became typing, because my handwriting was really very hard to read. So I then went through school like every other kid. And then I decided to go into medical school. It was kind of the family business. My father was a physician. And so it just seemed like the right path for me. Really, the biggest decision I had to make was when I was towards the end of my medical school, is to decide, what do I want to do for my specialty? And I paid attention to where was I enjoying myself the most. And I noticed that when I was in my psychiatry rotation, I really didn't want to go home. I just wanted to keep working, and my time would be done, and there would be no reason for me to be there, but I still wanted to keep working. And that to me was telling. And I felt that I wanted to be in a specialty where I would enjoy doing it year after year. And that's how I decided to go into psychiatry. To train, I came to the United States. I did my internship in Rochester. And after the first year of experiencing snow for the very first time, and Rochester has more snow than most places. This is what you call the typical immigrant experience, not completely understanding what we've gotten ourselves into. I then decided to go for a transfer, and I ended up at Johns Hopkins Hospital. And Johns Hopkins Hospital, I just loved doing the work that I did. It was in East Baltimore, which is an area that is, has struggled. At that time when I was there, there was a crack epidemic. Um, and in the middle of it, there was this, center of excellence. But I do appreciate the fact that I got to work where I got to work. And then I did a public psychiatry fellowship at Columbia. That's again something that really helped me grow as a person and get an appreciation for the impact we can have as medical professionals on the world around us. So most of my work was with a drop-in center for people who are homeless, and also residences for people who had formerly experienced homelessness but now had places to live. And they had their unique set of mental health issues, different cultures, and that was a great experience for me. Um, I definitely appreciated being in a country where I had the opportunity to be able to do anything I was willing to apply myself to. Certainly, there were obstacles. Perhaps obstacles for me were greater than the obstacles for people who were not in my position. But to me, it felt like it was surmountable with enough hard work. Um, when I arrived to the United States, and I've shared that story with you before, it was a very unusual experience because I arrived at JFK and the person who was supposed to come pick us up, four women, we were traveling together, just didn't show up. And we didn't know what to do then. And we had each other and we were trying to strategize. And there's a family that was there to pick up somebody else. And they saw they saw our plight and they said, why don't you come with us? And we stayed the next, I think, night or couple of nights to figure out where we're going to go from there. And to me, I think that was a metaphor for what my life in America has been, which has been people constantly giving me an assist. And then it was up to me then to do the running that is required after the assist. And I try to pay that forward and I try to give that assist to other people. And through my work, I have met so many hardworking people who that little bit of assist is what they needed. And I try my best to give that assist to others.
Wow, that's such an amazing story. I could
Thank
just
you.
imagine arriving in new country, everything is different, not knowing where to go. That's so amazing that you found that family and they just took you in. And I have to agree that, I mean, I didn't have such a dramatic experience, but I had similar experiences where people in this country just really opened their arms to me. And like to me, that's just the most beautiful thing.
I
Love it.
think there are good people everywhere. And I think not to say that terrible things don't happen. I mean, I work with folks who have had terrible things happen in their lives, and I completely acknowledge that. But I think I just was fortunate that, there were good things that came my way sometimes that really, it was a seed that grew up to be the tree. I can only imagine if my trajectory was different from early on. So many places where a
Mhm.
trajectory could go the wrong way. And I think it's just sometimes sheer good luck that you find that yourself in a better place, and then it's up to you what you make of it. So yeah, I
Right,
agree.
and that's why it's so important, like you said, to
Yeah,
pay it forward to help others because knowing that we have been the recipient of
yeah.
such goodwill.
And I think all of us, I
Yeah.
think we hear about the negative stuff, which is plenty of in the world. It is easy to lose
Mhm.
sight of all the gifts we have received and that we're capable of giving to others. And I try to keep my focus, even though there are times when it is harder for me than others, especially when bad things are going on around me. But all of us benefit from the kindness of so many people we don't even see. I mean, the fact that I went to these institutions where they trained me, um, that those institutions were created through the kindness of people who've long since gone from this world. And they created institutions that allowed somebody from like me who could just come in and train. And I could then go on and hopefully spread some of that benefit to others.
Yeah, that's so amazing. I want to ask you about psychiatry because I also considered that when I was in high school and I was thinking about how fascinating it is, psychiatry, psychology. I was looking at the different, like the psychologist path and the psychiatrist path. Can you say a little bit about just sort of day to day? What do you do? And is it difficult? Because I always thought maybe it would be hard to take on the emotions from all these patients who have all kinds of
So I have
issues.
worked in different kind of settings. I've worked in homeless shelters. I have worked in private practice where people who came to see me were obviously quite well off sometimes. Um, and I've worked in inpatient settings. Actually, the inpatient setting that I worked in, It was a unit that was meant specially for people who tended to be violent, which is not common in mental health. Um, Not everybody who has mental illness has any likelihood of being more violent, but that specific unit was for that. Right now, I work with people in prison. And I think every setting has its unique challenges. In the end, we're all the same human beings, but you tend to see more of something in certain places. So, for example, in um, places like the prisons, you see more people who have had difficult life circumstances as children. It is rare to find people who have had good life circumstances growing up. Um, and I think different circumstances bring us to different likelihood of finding more of something. So within mental health, there is, there's the effect of what's going on around you that makes a difference. And we saw an unfortunate and horrible example of that after 9/11, where people who had never had mental health issues in their lives all of a sudden develop, trauma-related symptoms. Um, and then sometimes it has to do with disease, things like schizophrenia, for example, which, people may have a genetic propensity for, or may happen out of nowhere. There may be no family member with schizophrenia. So there are different ways. I think mental health is sort of a general basket, but there are many, many ways. Just going back to what your question was about, how much of what you take in from what you see. I feel that, and that's something that we are taught very early in our work, that boundaries help. So I am not friends with my patients. I've never been friends with my patients. They are there for a reason. They're there to benefit from my services, because when we talk about friendship, we're talking about a two-way street. There should never be a two-way street. They should never feel obligated to do anything for me. And I think those boundaries help me not just in my work with mental health field, but in other places too. Somebody had asked me this question not too long ago. How do you deal with difficult personalities outside of my work? And I think boundaries. I mean, that's really the best way to deal with folks who are difficult, which is you say, okay, this is how much I want to listen to, this is how much I want to learn from you, but maybe this is where we have to stop. And beyond this is my boundary. And I think all of us could benefit from healthy boundaries.
Yeah, that's so important. I've definitely had times in my life where it's just like, okay, I can feel the boundary being encroached on, and we need to be pushing back so
Yeah,
that to preserve our own mental health. Because I'm sort of an empath, I by nature I like to talk to people, and I get emotional when the other person gets emotional. And sometimes that's
yeah.
good because we want to show compassion, but sometimes it can go negative as
Well,
well.
talking of emotions, I mean, I have to acknowledge there have been times when somebody who I know professionally would tell me things that are difficult for me to hear. And there have been times when I've teared up, for example. But I think that's something that I respect and value, just like you respect and value that. And and then that's when you have to stop and ask yourself, am I taking care of myself through all of this?
Yeah, so important. And the other point you mentioned about children and how the rate in the prisons, like you see children who've gone through hardship or trauma, it just reemphasizes how important it is to preserve the childhood,
Absolutely.
and the family is so
Absolutely.
important.
Absolutely. And I think that's where, unfortunately, as a country, um, we are not doing such a great job. Because I do
Mhm.
think that there's such unevenness in how children grow up. There are areas
Mhm.
where opportunities are abundant, and parents have the ability to take those opportunities, and then the children can benefit from that. And there are areas where that is not the case. I have worked, for example, in food deserts, and you can walk many, many blocks and find not one piece of healthy food. And I can only imagine, and I did not live in that food desert. I can only imagine that a child who's living there, the struggles that their family and the child themselves have to go through.
Um, wow. So I want to shift topics a little bit and talk a little bit about your work in the community. So you've worked in the community center, as well as with APAPA, right? The Asian Political Action. I don't know if I know all the acronyms. Can you say a little bit about the work that you've been doing and why you do it?
Yeah. So I think over the years, I have worked with a lot of area um, organizations. And, going back to 2010, that's when my littlest one was about um, or 3.5, something like that. Um, I was asked to take on as the president of the Muslim Community Center by people on the board. I completely did not feel that I was ready for it because I did not feel that I had the experience. I had not been as engaged with the community center as the others had been. But they were certain. Everybody said it was, unanimously. They said you have to do it. Um, and so I just gingerly stepped in, and it was an enriching experience. And you get to see how things are done. We walk into all these spaces sometimes unaware of the work that has gone around us. When you walk into businesses, you don't necessarily look at those little exit signs, but there is a science to it. There's so many exit signs that need to be there, right? Most people don't know what's a Knox box, which is that little box outside of commercial buildings where they put keys in case the fire department has to go in. Things like that. So these are little things, but I have a new appreciation for it. I now know what is the pitch for a handicap ramp. Things that I had never paid attention to. So I think as we completed the capital project, that was a great experience for me. Not just learning about what's a pressure release valve and the fact that it should not leak if it's gas in there, but I also learned things like how we build things is also about who we are building for. So the equity piece, I think, really is very important. And I think of that as we're doing the capital project. I know right now it is mainly on paper. We haven't seen it come to fruition yet. But I know that a lot of people are probably working really hard on it right now to do it right. But Niskayuna, for example, we have different communities. And recently, because as you know, I'm campaigning, I've gone to Old Niskayuna, I've gone to Scotia, I've gone to Rosendale Estates, everywhere really. I've been going to different parts of Niskayuna, or actually, Scotia is not Niskayuna, but school district. And you learn that every community has different needs. It has different desires, and how we will build will matter for the years to come in terms of the opportunities that that community will get. So, Old Niskayuna, some of the neighborhoods, the most important thing was walkability to school, right? And they cared about that deeply. They cared that there should be a walkway that safely takes their child from home to whichever school they're going to. And these are the kind of things that I think teach you that equity is baked into everything. We can't say, oh, this is about equity and that is not. Equity is baked into brick and mortar. Equity is baked into where are we going to put a business. It is baked into everything we do. It's baked into where are we going to buy something, right? So going back to what you were talking about, my path with nonprofits. So I started with the Muslim Community Center. I did that for about 3 years. I was their president. Then, as you can imagine, it's a lot. I have 3 children. At that time, none of them were adults. They were all children. Now, I'm very happy to say 2 of them are adults that I'm really proud of. I'm also proud of my young one. And so I had to excuse me, step back and I took, less demanding roles. So one of my less demanding roles was that I have been active with APAPA, which is an organization that strives to create political and civic engagement in Asian Pacific Islander people. And so I became active with that and really love H.B. Wong, who I see as this like granddaddy of Asian American political engagement and civic engagement. Um, and I, started, helping them with organize, let's say, community forum where people can learn things like, how to run a campaign, things like that. And one of the opportunities slash challenges that came across was that every year the organization likes to place API candidates in um, political offices, public servant offices who were elected. And I said, okay, I will take that on. And for a couple of years, I did that, with the help of other volunteers. The last year, and actually the last 2 years, I had a co-leader, Dr. Kuo, who's amazing. And so what we did was we matched the donors who paid for these organizations. We matched the grant from them to candidates from Capital District who we think had interest in public service and who had who understood what the Asian Pacific Islander values are, and some of them didn't look typically Asian, but they care about the values, and to us that was important. And we helped match them with various offices like the Senator Gillibrand's office, the governor's office, lieutenant governor's office, and they were able to interview the candidates, pick the person that makes sense for them. And I think having this one summer where they got a taste of public service, our hope was that eventually that'll lead to public service careers for these people. So that's one of the ways. And then, of course, I've been active with something that is very near and dear to me, which is the Sisterhood of Salam Shalom. I feel that that's something that, a sisterhood of Jewish and Muslim women, we can do so much together. And we have really become each other's keepers. I know they say brother's keeper, but it's really sister's keepers too. And we've really become very close over the years. And so that's something that I have been active with. And unfortunately, recently, as I've been busy with the school campaign, I feel like I've missed too many of our gatherings, but I'm just looking forward to doing more of that over the years.
Wow, that's so awesome. I'm just thinking about when you were talking about equity and how it's baked into everything. And so much of that comes from representation, right? Both in political offices, but also in voting, supporting candidates. So I feel like it's all interconnected.
I agree. I agree. I think it is so much closer to people's heart when they've actually experienced something versus somebody who's looking at it from the outside.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
That's why it's so important to have representation from the different communities. Like Asian Americans are very underrepresented in the political sphere. So just very happy to see the work that you're doing with APAPA, with the internship, building that pipeline, but also setting an example and serving yourself. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So any last thoughts about advice that you might give to others, whether it's young people looking for a career in medicine or maybe someone who's interested to volunteer or do more in their communities?
I think it's really hard nowadays because of COVID, because the opportunity to volunteer has become so much more conditional. But I think, towards where we're hoping to have a lot more people vaccinated and things will open up some more. I have found that when volunteering is done close to home, it is the most meaningful. I think not to say anything is bad about volunteering far from where you are. I think that's very important experience too. But there's so much need within a few miles of where we are that I really feel that that's where a lot of our volunteering should go into. Hopefully, as things open up, nonprofits who are hurting for volunteers right now will devise more ways of incorporating younger folks into their work. But I think, as much as volunteering does for others, it does a whole lot for the person who's doing it. It allows you to connect with amazing people. It allows you to feel that your life is so much more enriched than if you were not volunteering. If I took out volunteering from my life, if I took a scalpel and cut that out, my life would not be very rich. It would be a very boring life, I got to tell you. So I have really, I think I'm addicted to volunteering. I'm sorry for the lack of better words. But I think there is certainly so much that I benefit from it, from just being there and getting that feeling of having done something good and learning. I used to coordinate a soup kitchen at the city mission, and I felt that work of like coordinating, who's bringing the bread and this time we're going to be here and who's going to clean the table. Um, that seems mundane in my day-to-day life because in our day-to-day life it's so annoying. But in that context, it really felt exciting to say, yeah, we got somebody to clean the tables. So
There's like
yes,
a purpose,
it
right? There's a
definitely
big
gives
purpose
purpose.
behind it.
Absolutely.
Wow, amazing. That's so awesome. Well, thank you, Aliya. It's so nice chatting with
Thank
you.
you. And thank you for
Um,
all that you do for Niskiuna. You have enriched our communities, a community in a way that I think very few people get to. Um, Besides raising amazing children who are so cool, and I love that blue tie. Um, you have brought so much to our community. I know that with APAPA, we have relied on your help sometimes with getting, other people to get a sense of what it is like to go into public service through your public service, through the school board, and just connecting with people. Something like what you're doing now. You're introducing neighbors to neighbors. So I appreciate your work.
Oh, thank you so much. It's fun for me. As you said, I'm addicted to volunteering too. So it's really great. And I learned so much. And I also always feel like I want to do more, and like even with the Papa, like HP will send me an email or something and I'll just be like, okay, I can do this. But most of the time, like I don't really participate as much as I want to just because I have so much other stuff going on. Like you said about the sisterhood, which I find absolutely amazing because there's so much, I don't know, crazy war stuff going on in the world and between religions, between countries, and to have that sisterhood, that's
Oh
so
yeah,
special.
absolutely, absolutely. I appreciate that you took the time to talk to me, and I love talking to you, and I love talking to you, Jonah.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this interview. As I thought more about this conversation, I kept going back thinking about the many people who help others along the way and how we all benefit from the kindness of strangers and from people who we may never meet, who build institutions or systems that help us in our daily lives. Um, so, hope you enjoy this interview and like and subscribe this video. Hope to see you in the next interview.